Okay, so this is my TP3.3. It's for the session that I did at Huddersfield University in March. I was working with a group of students who were youth and community students that had they were at a conference looking at research. So I wanted to look at something that was loosely based on research but was really beneficial for them as youth workers and as students. So I was looking at different methods of how they could measure things like distance travelled. So what I wanted to do is I wanted them to learn from one another from their own experiences. So I was looking a little bit at Vygotsky and the sort of idea of scaffolding and the idea of learning from one another. I wanted to lay the table out in like a cafe style where they can move around. So they started off on, there was like 4 tables with sweets and things on. So I wanted to the environment to be quite relaxed. So what I wanted them to do is I wanted them to move from table to table to table. So that's why I set it up like that. In the session that I was observed, there wasn't that many learners. I think there was only 4 young people. But in the session in the morning, there was quite a lot more. And in some ways, it worked much better in the morning than it did in the afternoon because I had more. But I quickly sort of thought about it. I'm quite good at thinking on my feet and about how I can change it really quickly to make it a little bit more equitable for everybody and to make it work. So what I did was, in the morning, they moved around the table, they were in groups of 3. But in the afternoon, there were only 4 young people, 4 learners. So I did it all as one. So I got them to work through each of the different areas on the worksheet, which if you want to have a look at, then you can do. And I've also put some photographs in of evidence of work. I also wanted to really think about how I could measure distance travelled, so how that I could meet the outcomes that I'd set for that session. So what I did was I got them to do a little sort of wheel at the beginning, based on the outcomes, something called the outcome star, which is something that I use a lot in my work. But actually, I think it's a really, really good way of being able to map progress and show that this has happened. So what I did is I gave them and said, what do you feel at the beginning? What do you feel at the end? And that's like a little wheel, and there was 3 questions, and it was what they knew at the beginning, and then what they didn't know, on what they'd known at the end, and then they could write a few things. So I thought that was really good because I thought that really helped me. It was a really good way of me being able to link it to the outcomes that I'd set for that session. So obviously I wanted them to learn from one another, which was part of the reason for getting them to move around the table, which was my thinking about Vygotsky. So getting them to be able to look at what other people had written for the one before, that might just help them to answer the question that they were on at that point. So I thought that was really good. Obviously, there was a whole idea of the communities of practice because we were all youth workers, and actually, one of the things that I know that I'm quite good at is that whole dialogue and having that conversation. And so one of the photographs that I'd put together was a Forest Schools picture, because I was just talking about who I was, and one of the girls went, "Oh, that's Forest Schools," and I was like, "Oh yeah, how do you know about?" I was had this conversation about how she knew about what Forest Schools was. And she'd done her placement with somebody that I did my Forest Schools training on, but also somebody that I knew quite well as a colleague. And so we were talking about that, and then somebody else I know someone else in the group was on placement with someone else that I knew. So there was this whole, before we'd even started, my relationships had already, we'd got some common ground and some people in common. So I thought it was a really good idea, and it really helped me to get those young people to engage, because actually in the second group of people, the one that was being observed, they weren't as engaging as the other people. So I found that I did find that quite difficult at times. So obviously I changed my session halfway through. I thought that actually it went. I thought that it went really well. Did that session? Sorry, the cat. And I thought that it went really well. I thought the young people were really engaging, and I thought I really got my points across to them. I thought I planned it well. I really like the idea of the social learning, like the Bandoras and the gardeners and those sort of theories. So I think for me, it's all about the people, putting them in the forefront, and then building on what resources they are, and I think that's really important. I can plan things out, but actually I need to use those people that are in that room. And so that 5 minutes at the beginning, that quick, okay, what do you know? That gives me that chance to be able to quickly make a decision on the spot of what's good, what's not, what their ability is, and it really helps me to be able to do that and to be able to gauge who I need to include and who I need to be including in it, and maybe who I need to be asking those questions to. Sometimes I find it difficult to be able to stretch and challenge people in terms of the work that I'm setting, especially for this, because I didn't know what the learners who they were. Obviously, they were university students, and they were second year, so I had an idea of that academically they'd be all at a point, and as youth and community students, you're on placement, and so you've got to have a bit of an idea. But how I found in this session the sort of idea of stretch and challenge was that to ask questions. I was obviously the subject was something quite new to a lot of them, so they didn't get that. So in terms of the content, I stretched them from what they already knew, and I was opening more doors to get them to sort of understand. But I find questioning really good, so asking questions, sort of being able to step in and step out when it's the most appropriate time to be able to sit to get in there and say, okay, well, have you thought about this? Okay, so well, what do you think about? Okay, so tell me this. But actually, I also like to ask the question and then step back, so observe from the outside and let them talk it through. And I think that dialogue is far more important than and that questioning, that challenging one another and one another's thoughts and views as just as important as answering a question at the end, or being able to show me that they've done something. So I think thought you were well. I'd like to have had more people. I sometimes find it difficult. I find timing quite difficult. I use my session plans and time them, and I even had to help me timers on my presentation. But I still find it really difficult, and I still find that I always run out of time, especially on these one-off sessions or sessions that it's not like a 6-week program where you can pick it up, where you need to get everything in that hour. I find that quite difficult. I really like that, going in and doing the guest stuff and being able to step away, but I do find the timing quite difficult, and it's something that I've always found quite hard. I'm not quite sure what I would do differently next time. Obviously I would like to have a bigger group. I would the first group in the morning, they didn't get on to doing the activity that I'd set, and the second group sort of didn't race through, but I still found, I think I'd have liked to have given them a slightly different activity, especially the second group. It was about creating their own assessment tool. Now, I think that's quite a good thing, and I think the first group, if we'd have got onto it, would have done really well. The second group, I think, found that quite difficult because they were probably not as articulate as maybe the others. So I think in that sense, I would change that to make that bigger impact. But like I said, I think you know it was really good. I thought the session went really well. I included lots of different learning theories like Gardner and Vygotsky. We had the common ground, which is something that Lavi and Wenger talk about. So I think that I'd covered quite a lot of the things that wanted to, especially with the cafe style.